On today's episode of The Franchise, it is Wednesday, February 15th, and in this episode, we're going to recap Super Bowl 57 between the Chiefs and the Eagles. Now, I know it's been a few days since the Super Bowl, but we're still going to go out here on Wednesday. It's been 3 days, but we're still going to recap the Super Bowl. We're also going to take a look at some NFL offseason news and some rumors. The NFL free agency starts in March. So there's a lot of rumors going around and some new head coaching hires around the NFL. And then we're going to start doing top 10s at each position in the NFL as we, over the next few weeks as we enter the stage of the NFL offseason where there's not a whole lot to talk about. So today we're going to start with the top 10 quarterbacks. The most important position in the NFL. That's what we're going to do. Top 10 quarterbacks today at the end of the episode. And we'll work our way around the offense and defensive side of the ball, giving out top 10s there. Before we get into today's episode, as always, the franchise is available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. In the description of every episode, you can find the TikTok as well as the website, thefranchisepodcast.net, where you can find some articles there. Working on one right now for the MLB. But let's start here with Super Bowl 57 between the Chiefs and the Eagles. The Chiefs pulled off the victory 38-35. First of all, I'd like to point out a few things I correctly predicted in this game. First of all, I predicted that the Chiefs would win the game. You can go back, look at the tape from the Super Bowl prediction episode. I said the Chiefs would win. I also said that they would win late in the fourth quarter, game-winning drive. Mahomes would lead them down there, and whether it's a touchdown or a field goal, they win the game. So I basically predicted the outcome of this game. And then I also predicted the coin toss. I said tails. It was tails. So, I am him. But in terms of this game, this was arguably one of the best Super Bowls I've ever personally watched. And one over the last few seasons I can remember is easily the best one over the last 3 to 5 years. This game was amazing all the way around. Both teams played extremely well offensively. I know defense is always something you like to see. And this game had some defensive moments too, right? There was a few defensive touchdowns, some big hits, some big stops, big plays on both sides of the ball. But this was a very, very nice game for both teams offensively. I want to start talking about the Eagles first since they did lose this game. First, Jalen Hurts played amazing. Jalen Hurts arguably was the best player on the field for both teams in this football game. 27 of 38 passing, 304 yards, 1 touchdown. He also rushed for 70 yards and 3 touchdowns. 4 touchdowns total in this game. 374 yards total. Jalen Hurts carried this Eagles team with his legs and with his arm. Jalen Hurts was able to make big-time throws in big-time moments to his receivers down the field to either get a first down, get a touchdown, just advance their field position. He was able to do that multiple times throughout this game. And then he was also able to keep the ball, use his legs, and whether it's that's get into the end zone or have a huge rush, he was able to do that as well. I want to point out, you look at the first 2 games for the Eagles in the postseason against the Giants and then against the Niners. The Philadelphia wide receiver room was not used much. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, even Dallas Goedert at tight end. Those guys were not targeted and did not have the biggest games against those teams because they were blowing them out. But in the Super Bowl, in a stage where the Chiefs, your opponent, they're going to be in this football game, it was more than well known that A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert were going to have to be involved in the game plan. And ultimately, they were. A.J. Brown had an incredible wide-open touchdown in the end zone. That one, I believe, was a 50-plus yard touchdown reception to A.J. Brown. He ended the day with 96 yards and a touchdown on 6 catches. He could have had another huge play. That one was just broken up by 2 defenders that were on him. And then Devontae Smith had a game too. He had one catch down the sideline late in the game on the left side, where he is running, catches it, gets 3 feet in, falling out of bounds, almost was able to get the ball to touch the pylon for a touchdown. He ended up at, I think it was the 2-yard line. And then he had another catch, I think it was a little bit earlier, on the right side. He catches that ball 3 feet in bounds, lands on his helmet, and then they ultimately don't call it a catch. I think that should have been a catch, right? Even if a receiver catches the ball and he doesn't maintain full possession going out of bounds, he still had 3 feet in bounds. It's not like he had 1, 2, and then as his 2 feet were in, the ball was coming out, right? If this right here is the football, if you're watching, if you get the 2 feet down, 1 foot, 2 foot, but the ball's all loose, obviously that's not a catch, but if you got 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, or ball's loose, but you still have 3 feet in, I feel like that should be a catch no matter what the outcome of the ball is when you're out of bounds. Either way, wasn't a touchdown, wasn't a catch. But both of those receivers played amazing. They were able to make big catches, big plays, and that's all because Jalen Hurts was able to trust his arm, trust his receivers, and trust the play calling. Dallas Goedert had an amazing game too. He had a few catches, one, I believe, on 3rd down, right in between safety Justin Reed, and then another one late in that, I think it was in that 4th quarter, where he was running towards the right sideline. I think he toe-tapped in, barely got his 2nd foot down. I believe they called that one a catch after the Chiefs challenged. But those receivers for Philadelphia played amazing. That offensive line for Philadelphia, arguably the best offensive line in the entire NFL, played great. So if both of those, if the offense, if the skill position players and the offensive line played great in this football game, where did Philadelphia struggle? It's the defense. Their defensive line, their pass rush played horrible. For the first time all season, they were not good. A team that led the NFL in sacks during the regular season, a team that in the postseason was able to get after, whether it was Daniel Jones or any of the San Francisco 49ers quarterbacks, throughout the regular season and the postseason, the Eagles' pass rush was able to get to the quarterback. And in this game against the Chiefs, they were not able to put pressure on Patrick Mahomes and really make big plays when it mattered most. You had no sacks. You had a Chiefs O-line that is not as good as the Eagles' offensive line, and you could argue has some holes, right? So all Philadelphia had to do was come out there and just play their best football, their best pass rush, their best defensive game of the season, and they were going to be able to win this game. But credit to that Chiefs offensive line. They blocked the best game of the season. They played absolutely amazing to block a Philadelphia pass rush that's arguably the best in the league, and they shut them down, and they were able to win the Super Bowl. For the Chiefs, they played amazing. Defensively, they did have that one defensive scoop and score touchdown on that Jalen Hurts fumble. They arguably could have had a second one on a Miles Sanders reception in the backfield. That one's weird. That play is something I actually want to talk about for a second because that doesn't make any sense. Miles Sanders catches a football from Jalen Hurts in the backfield. Catches it. 2 feet down, he's turning to make a move. Gets absolutely slaughtered by the defender. The ball comes out, picked up by the defense, scoop and score touchdown. They review it, and it's an incomplete pass. How is that an incomplete pass? Miles Sanders got 2 feet down and turned and made a football move. I think if you catch the ball securely, if you catch the football and there's no movement, you securely have the football, and then you get 2 feet down, that is a catch. That is a catch. So it's not like the Chiefs got screwed by that call. I mean, they did win the game, but the NFL has no idea what a catch is, because you look at a few times during the game, whether it's the Dallas Goedert catch or the Devontae Smith sideline catch where he got 3 feet in, but the ball, he didn't really have possession of the football going out of bounds. And then you look at this play where he has 2 feet down, possession of the football, and then he gets blown up, and that's an incomplete pass. The NFL really needs to figure out what a catch is, because you've had 3 different instances in this Super Bowl, completely different scenarios, and they're all called differently depending on where you are on the field. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But back to the Chiefs, they played great. Mahomes played absolutely amazing. His stat numbers, his yard numbers won't tell you the full story of this game. 21 for 27 passing, 182 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Time of possession, the Chiefs had 24 minutes of possession. The Eagles had 35. Well, first of all, there was a few times, right, they had that scoop and score defensive touchdown, so that takes possession off the clock for Kansas City, and the Eagles get the ball back, right? So I think you obviously take the touchdown over the time of possession. However, Mahomes, despite his numbers, his passing numbers being low, he played amazing in this game. There was a point in this game where we thought he wasn't going to come back because he injured his ankle again. There was a possibility that you would have seen Chad Henne play in the Super Bowl against the Eagles, and I think at that point, the Eagles would have won the game. But Mahomes comes back, and he plays amazing in the second half. In the first half, we thought he was done, he was injured, he wouldn't come back out and play, or at least if he did play, he wouldn't be the same. We thought he'd be like he was against the Jacksonville Jaguars in the divisional round when he hurt his ankle the first time. But he comes out in the second half and balls out. They come back from that 10-point deficit in the second half. He has a huge rush in the fourth quarter, and then they ultimately put themselves in field goal position and win the football game. So Mahomes wins his second Super Bowl and Super Bowl MVP. Kadarius Toney had a very, very nice punt return, a 65-yard punt return. That was a great pickup for the Chiefs at the trade deadline. And then I guess we have to talk about the infamous play, the play that a lot of people are talking about as the reason why the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. It's the Bradbury hold at the end of the game on Juju Smith-Schuster in the red zone that on, I think it was 3rd down, that ultimately gives the Chiefs a first down, puts them in a little bit better field position, and allows them to win the football game. First of all, it's a very, very light hold. There's very light contact, despite what Bradbury said. We can ignore the fact that Bradbury said he was holding him, Juju. Very, very light hold. I mean, there's very light tugging on the jersey, on the arm. There's very little contact there. But you can see how a ref could make that call. You can see the contact where he can make that call. However, I don't think it's the right time to make the call. It's late in the. I think there's 2 minutes left in the Super Bowl. It's a tie game in the red zone. The Chiefs are already in field goal range, so despite whether they convert on this 3rd down or they don't, they're still going to have the opportunity to kick a field goal if they don't, right? They're still going to be in the same spot. And despite Harrison Butker missing a field goal earlier, you think that he would make this one and still put the Chiefs up in this game. I just think it's a really, really bad time to make this call. First of all, Juju had no shot without the very little contact. If Bradbury didn't put a finger on him, Juju's not catching this football. This football's way out of bounds in the back of the end zone, and Juju's 5 yards out from the line of scrimmage. So there's no shot that he's going to be able to catch that ball, even if Bradbury made no contact with him. So this call doesn't make any sense. It's very little contact. If Bradbury was pulling him and ripping his jersey, and his jersey ripped off, obviously you make the call, but there's very, very little contact there. So that call really shouldn't have been called, because it takes away the opportunity for the Eagles to go down and win the game as well, right? Because let's say they don't convert on 4th down, Kansas City, or on 3rd down. You kick the field goal 38-35, same score as the end of the game. You just give Philadelphia, a minute and a half of offense. You give Jalen Hurts a minute and a half to possibly go out there and have a Super Bowl game-winning drive, compared to it's now first down, we're going to run out the clock, kick the field goal, win the game, 4 seconds left. You can't do anything with 4 seconds. So I'm not saying the Eagles lost this game because of the penalty. I think obviously it would have been the same score. Penalty, no penalty, conversion, no conversion. The score's probably still 38-35. You just give Philadelphia more time to go down the field and potentially either tie the game again or go up and ultimately win the Super Bowl. But the refs they were not the reason the Eagles lost this game, right? There was not a billion calls that went against them. They were not screwed at all by the refs at really any point in this game. This was a very, very clean officiating game on both sides. So the refs really stayed out of the game, obviously until the end, which they should have still stayed out of it. They should have not made that call, but they did. Chiefs win the Super Bowl. Also, first of all, the field conditions in that game were absolutely horrible. Supposed to be some new type of grass, and it looked like a slip and slide out there. Absolutely atrocious field conditions. But Kansas City wins the Super Bowl like I predicted, and Philadelphia falls short, but Jalen Hurts balled out. He absolutely played amazing. Matt Mahomes, 2 Super Bowls, 2 MVPs, 2 Super Bowl MVPs in his first 5 or 6 full NFL seasons. He's on some Hall of Fame trajectory in his career, and he's only 27. All right, NFL offseason, real quick. We got some head coaches getting hired. Both of them former coordinators from the Philadelphia Eagles. You have Colts hiring Eagles' former offensive coordinator Shane Steichen, and then the Cardinals hiring Eagles' defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon. Both these teams right here have been waiting. I mean, it's been weeks where they've gone through multiple interviews. The Texans, the Broncos, and the Panthers hired their head coaches weeks ago. So the Colts and Cardinals have been waiting like a month now to hire a head coach. They finally get their guys. The Eagles now have to replace 2 coordinators. We'll see how they fare next season, right? Without their offense and defensive coordinator, how will the team adjust? Who will they bring in? I'm not familiar with a lot about these 2 coaches. For the Colts, from what it sounded like in the press conference, he wants to go to the direction of drafting a quarterback, which makes sense. I think the Colts need to draft a quarterback. They should not go after a guy like Derek Carr or Aaron Rodgers or a veteran quarterback in the offseason. They've done that for 5 years now. They need to go out there and draft a C.J. Stroud, a Bryce Young, a Will Levis, a Hendon Hooker, and they need to build around that guy. For the Cardinals, this guy, defensive head coach, they're going to be out without Kyler Murray for the first half of the season. So we'll see what they do. I mean, what quarterback are they going to bring in to start the season? Kyler Murray's going to probably not play till at least, week 10? Because he's out with that ACL injury. But we'll see how these 2 guys go. I'm not familiar with a lot of their game. We'll see what kind of coordinators they bring in and what kind of rosters they have next season. The Raiders officially cut Derek Carr. They cut him yesterday before his $40 million contract guarantee. Obviously, the Raiders benched Derek Carr with the last 2 games of the season, and that was basically when you knew they were going to go a different direction. First, you thought it was going to be because of Tom Brady potentially going to the Raiders, but since he retired, the options for the Raiders are Aaron Rodgers or draft a quarterback. And for a team that potentially looks like they want to compete, you better hope that Aaron Rodgers wants to play football and that he wants to leave the Green Bay Packers. Because if you draft a rookie quarterback, unless this guy is Patrick Mahomes, I don't see how you're competing with the roster you currently have. But Derek Carr did meet with the Saints last week. Potential talks for a trade. Ultimately, Carr said he's not going to waive his no-trade clause. He wants to be cut, and then they cut him before his $40 million guarantee. So what teams could be interested in Derek Carr? Obviously, the New Orleans Saints. They met with Carr. There was some talks about a trade for Derek Carr, and the Saints are in need of a quarterback. I think there's a boatload of other teams that could use Derek Carr. The Carolina Panthers, right? Sam Darnold's really the only quarterback on that roster. He didn't play great last season. He's not been good his entire NFL career. I think you'd rather have Derek Carr over Sam Darnold. And in a division like the NFC South that is wide open, right? The Falcons, the Saints, the Buccaneers, and the Panthers, any of those teams add Derek Carr, they're immediately the favorites in that division because it's such a poor division. Like, all of those teams are horrible. I think Tampa Bay is a team that should be interested in Derek Carr. If I'm him, that's the spot I want to go to. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, you made the playoffs. You won a championship 2 years ago. Your defensive side of the ball is great, and you're automatically favorites in that division. The Jets, they could really use a quarterback. I mean, Zach Wilson's been horrible with his time with the Jets, and I don't think Mike White is an answer. Mike White played great, but Derek Carr is a proven winner, right? Derek Carr is a guy you'd rather have over a Zach Wilson and a Mike White. In New York with a championship caliber defense and some pieces on that offensive side of the ball, I think Derek Carr and the Jets is a great fit. Houston, if they don't decide to draft a quarterback at number 2, I guess he could go there. Or if they sign him to a 1-year deal, I guess. His brother played there, so it's a potential spot because it's in the Carr family. The Indianapolis Colts, I think, like I said, I think they should go the direction of drafting a young quarterback. But if they decide to go after a veteran quarterback, Derek Carr fits the mold. The Tennessee Titans, Ryan Tannehill, I think it's time to move on from this guy. He's regressed since he got his contract extension. He played his best football his first 2-3 seasons in Tennessee. Since then, it's been falling out. They need some spark of life. They need a true game winner at that quarterback position. And they could contend if they just build the right roster, they add the right receivers, they fix that O-line, they add some defense. And then if they just add a top-level quarterback, I mean, they can really make some noise in that AFC South. And then finally, I have the Washington Commanders. No way Carson Wentz starts. Taylor Heineke's probably on his way out. And then Sam Howell, maybe. But the Commanders are weird. They're a really dysfunctional organization. That's got to be the worst run organization in almost all of professional sports, from top to bottom. That team has a lot of issues. So there's a good amount of options for Derek Carr. I think if I was to put out the favorites, I think you go Tampa, the Jets, the Saints, and then maybe the Panthers. I think those are the 4 teams that are really going to be in on Derek Carr and his services. All right, some wide receiver trade rumors. DeAndre Hopkins, I believe, did request a trade a few months ago, or as soon as the offseason, though the regular season ended. I think he's going to get traded, right? He's looking for an extension. He's like 1 or 2 years left on his deal. He's in his 30s. Last season, obviously, he was suspended for the first few games of the season. But last season with Arizona, in his limited sample size, 64 catches, 717 yards, 3 touchdowns on the year. If I'm a team that needs a receiver, you have to go out there and get DeAndre Hopkins. Because when he plays a full season, healthy, at the top of his game, he's a top 5 receiver in the NFL. At one point, he was the number 1 receiver in the league, like 2 years ago. DeAndre Hopkins is a game changer. If you're a team that's looking to compete and needs a wide receiver, a true wide receiver number 1, DeAndre Hopkins is the perfect guy to get. We'll list these potential teams actually after. Another guy that could be on the move this offseason, whether he's cut or traded, is going to be Keenan Allen. There's been rumors that he gets cut. I think his cap hits around 20. I think if the Chargers cut Keenan Allen and their tight end Everett, they can save over $20 million in cap space. Keenan Allen as a cut candidate makes a lot of sense. First of all, this guy missed a boatload of games last season. due to an injured hamstring. He's slowed down a lot as a receiver. He's not been able to stay healthy. And this past season, when he was on the field, he just wasn't that productive. 752 yards, 4 touchdowns, 11.4 yards per catch, 66 receptions. In that sample size, obviously he missed a ton of games with that hamstring injury. The Chargers, I think they just need to go in a direction of younger, faster wide receivers. They have one of the slower wide receiver rooms in the NFL. And Keenan Allen entering his age 30 season, I think it's time for the Chargers to move on from him, save themselves some money. And Keenan Allen's going to be one of the top receivers on the market. However, I think whatever team goes out there and tries to sign Keenan Allen, they're getting a potential Kenny Golladay. I'm going to say it. Keenan Allen's a great player, but Kenny Golladay, a few years ago when he left the Lions to go to the Giants on this massive 4-year deal, I feel like it's going to be kind of the same story for Keenan Allen. Oh, this guy, Keenan Allen, he's been a great receiver. He's just been injured. He's had a few things go wrong in his career. I think Keenan Allen's a better receiver than Kenny Golladay ever was, right? But I just think whatever team goes out there and tries to sign him next, they're either going to get a guy who's going to play every game and be amazing, or they're going to get a guy who misses 10 games a season and just isn't productive when he's on the field. Another trade candidate is Brandon Cooks. He wanted to get traded at the deadline from the Texans. I think it's only smart for them to move on from him. You could easily get a 3rd-round pick for Brandon Cooks, maybe a 4th. It only makes sense for them to move on from him. He's, last season, 690 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's a valuable guy to a team that's looking to win a championship, or a team that's trying to contend. Being your wide receiver 2, if he's your wide receiver 3, you're freaking winning a Super Bowl. But it makes sense for him to move on from the Texans. They're not trying to win. He's trying to go out there and play for a team that actually wants to win. And the Texans need to trade Brandon Cooks. So what teams could be out there in the wide receiver market? All of the teams in the NFL could add wide receivers, but I think these ones are the most likely. Chicago Bears, the Ravens, Cowboys, Bills, Patriots, Chargers, Giants, Jets, Titans, and the Packers. The Bears, they have the most cap space in the NFL, trying to find weapons for Justin Fields. The Ravens, they haven't had a true number 1 receiver around Lamar Jackson his entire time there. The Cowboys, they have CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup, but they need a true number 2. We saw that in the postseason. The Bills, they could use another weapon with Diggs and Davis. The Patriots always could use wide receiver help. The Chargers, if they move on from Keenan Allen, you're going to need another guy to pair with Mike Williams. The Giants, their receiver room is horrible. The Jets, they have Garrett Wilson. They could use more receivers. The Titans have no wide receivers. And then the Packers, they do have Christian Watson. But they could use, if Aaron Rodgers stay, they could use like a DeAndre Hopkins, a Keenan Allen, a Brandon Cooks. They could use one of those guys out there in Green Bay. All right, finally, we got the top 10 quarterbacks. Like I said, a few weeks ago, we were doing this with the MLB, where we did the top 10 players at each position, going around the diamond. But now that the NFL season is over, it's no better time than to rank the top 10 players at every single position. And today we're going to start with the most important position in the NFL, the quarterback position. I saw Colin Cowherd do this yesterday. I saw a video he did yesterday of his top 10 quarterbacks, and that list was horrible. Atrocious list. His ranking of quarterbacks was bad, and I think he's one of the best people in sports media. But that list was horrible. I think this is arguably the perfect list. This is the correct list of top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. Over the next few weeks, like I said, we'll do running backs, receivers, tight ends. Somehow we'll figure out how to do the offensive line, corners, linebackers, pass rushers, safeties, go all the way around the football field here over the next few weeks. But today, top 10 quarterbacks. let's get it started. Number one quarterback in the NFL. How about the reigning Super Bowl MVP, Super Bowl champion, regular season MVP, most passing yards, most touchdowns on the best offense in the NFL this past season. A two-time NFL MVP, two-time champion, two-time Super Bowl MVP, Patrick Mahomes. He's easily the best player in the NFL, so he's the best quarterback in the league. He has the best talent, I think, of any football player, any quarterback ever. He's gifted with his legs, with his arm, with his ability to extend plays out of the pocket, his presence in the pocket. He's the best quarterback in the NFL. Not much has to be said about that. Number two, I have Joe Burrow from the Bengals. I think last season, I would have had Josh Allen number two before the start of this last season. But Joe Burrow played amazing this year. Took the Bengals in his second full healthy season to another AFC Championship game. They took down the Buffalo Bills in the playoffs. They took down Josh Allen. Pushed Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs team to a late fourth quarter win. Kansas City barely beat them in that game. Burrow played great this season. 4,475 yards, 3 touchdowns, 68% completion percentage, and 12 interceptions on the season. Burrow is one of those guys, and one of those few talents in the NFL. I think it's him and Mahomes, and then maybe Josh Allen and Aaron Rodgers that you can really count on to go out there and win you a football game late in the fourth quarter of a playoff game, of a tight regular season game, of when it matters most. Joe Burrow is going to be able to push you and take that team, whatever team he's on. He's going to be able to win you a game late when it matters most. Number three, I have Justin Herbert. He arguably has the best arm in the NFL. Whether it's Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers, I think Herbert arguably has the best deep ball arm in the entire NFL. 4,700 yards last season. That's second most in the NFL for Justin Herbert. 25 touchdowns, 68 completion percentage, 10 interceptions on the season. He's played great. I think there was a stat that I heard yesterday. I don't remember it exactly. But over his first 3 seasons, I think it was he has more yards and touchdowns than Mahomes did through his first 3 years. I have to double check that. I don't really remember the stat exactly. Herbert, despite his team not being able to have success in the playoffs or making the playoffs, he's been absolutely amazing through his first few seasons in the NFL. Obviously won Rookie of the Year, had the most passing yards by a rookie ever that season. Second most yards this season, only 25 touchdowns, but his talent, his arm talent, he's just an incredible talent at that quarterback position. If they can just find a way to have success in the postseason, Herbert's going to climb up this list, and he's really going to be talked about more as one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Number 4, I have Josh Allen from the Bills. Oh my gosh, bro. I'm got one of those loogies in my throat. Josh Allen from the Bills, I have him at number 4. 4,200 yards last season, 35 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, 63 completion percentage. Yeah, the story for Josh Allen last season was the turnovers. This past season, he got a little bit careless with the football. You know, he has the ability to extend plays and make plays that no one else in the NFL can do because his arm talent, his decision making, the way he's so talented that this season you could tell when he tried to extend plays, he'd force passes, make stupid decisions, whether it's in the red zone or just certain drives. He would turn the football over a lot. And ultimately, that was the reason this past season that the Bills, or one of the reasons why the Bills couldn't go as far as you would have thought they would at the beginning of the season, and why I have Josh Allen dropping a few spots from the beginning of the year to this point where I have him at number 4. Number 5, I have Jalen Hurts. Before the season, this guy probably wasn't even a top 10, 15 quarterback, in my opinion. I mean, this guy, this past season, second in NFL MVP, took his team to the Super Bowl, balled out in the Super Bowl, 3,701 yards passing, 22 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 13 touchdowns rushing on a 66 completion percentage. Jalen Hurts played amazing. He proved everybody wrong this past season about, this guy can't be a quarterback. This guy is too small. He's a running back. Jalen Hurts proved all that wrong. He's absolutely incredible. He's capable of winning games for your football team. I mean, you look at what the Eagles, without Jalen Hurts playing, they lost. When Jalen Hurts played, I think it was this past season, he only lost, what was it, 1 or 2 games? The Super Bowl, and I think it was one other game. Meanwhile, when he wasn't on the field, they lost their games with Gardner Minshew playing. They just weren't the same team. Jalen Hurts is the reason this Eagles team made it to the Super Bowl, was the best team in the NFC. He's the reason they are at that current spot that they're at. So he's extremely valuable to them. He's an extreme talent. His arm strength might not be a Justin Herbert, a Josh Allen, a Mahomes. But he's capable of playing that position with his arm, with his legs. He's a great passer, very underrated passer, great rusher. He's just an all-around amazing quarterback. He comes in at number 5. Number 6, Trevor Lawrence from the Jaguars. This guy, I mean, coming out of college was arguably one of the best quarterback prospects ever. Went number 1. First year in Jacksonville was a very disappointing season with under Urban Meyer at head coach. But this past season, Doug Peterson comes in. They go from the worst team in the NFL to winning their division under Trevor Lawrence. He played amazing this past season, 4,111 yards, 25 touchdowns, 66 completion percentage with 8 interceptions on the season. Like I said, Herbert took this team from being the worst team in the NFL the year before to being a playoff team that beat the Chargers, could have beat the Kansas City Chiefs. They took the Chiefs late into that fourth quarter. This team, Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars, are going to be around for a very, very long time. I mean, Lawrence is entering his 3rd season in the NFL. He's only going to get better. He has an elite arm talent, elite decision maker, great pocket presence. He comes in at number 6. Number 7, I do have Aaron Rodgers here. Last season was a down year for him, coming off of 2 back-to-back MVPs. Disappointing season. The Packers obviously missed the playoffs without Devontae Adams. Whether you want to blame it on his receivers or Rodgers himself, he did not play great. 3,600 yards, 26 touchdowns, 12 interceptions on 64% completion. I mean, whether it's his receivers or not, Aaron Rodgers did not play good. He was not playing at the level he has played over the past 15 seasons of his career. He was very, very disappointing this past season. Whether he decides to play football again or he decides to return to the Packers or he's on a new team, I mean, he's still one of the best players in the league. He's still capable of winning football games, having game-winning drives. I think he's one of the few guys out there in the NFL that you'd want in a potential game winner. He's a guy that you want to lead you down the field, despite how bad he was this past season for the Packers. All right, number 8, I have Lamar Jackson. Another season for him where he just missed significant time with injury. He only played 12 games this past season, 2,242 yards passing, 17 touchdowns passing, 62 completion percentage with 7 interceptions. Like I said, 12 games. He only played 12 games. He was very important. When he played, the Ravens were good. When he didn't play those games where he was injured, the Ravens, although they made the playoffs, their offense wasn't the same. They really missed that click with Lamar, that offensive power that they have with Lamar as a threat, as a passer, and as a rusher, was missing with him out those few games. But when he did play, he was great. I think early in the season, he was a potential MVP candidate, but obviously he got injured and missed significant time. We'll see what happens to him this offseason. That's been one thing that hasn't been talked about a lot recently. Does Lamar get extended? Do they trade him? Does he get franchise tagged? What happens to Lamar Jackson this offseason? But he's coming in at number 8 in this top 10 quarterback ranking. Number 9 is surprising, Jared Goff from the Lions. 4,438 yards, 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 65% completion. He played great. I know when this trade first happened between Stafford and Jared Goff, between the Rams and the Lions, it was easy argument that the Rams won the trade. Obviously, they won the Super Bowl. They got the better quarterback at the time. But there's a chance that the Lions long-term could win this trade. Jared Goff, former number 1 overall pick, balled out this season. The Lions almost made the playoffs, and he was amazing. He was smart with the football, didn't turn the ball over a lot, was able to push the ball deep down the field and get his receivers open and just make plays. He made tons of big plays throughout the season, and I think if the Lions want to make the playoffs next season, a part of their success is going to be on the shoulders of how Jared Goff plays this next season. And then finally, number 10, I have Derek Carr, formerly of the Raiders, currently a free agent. That number 10 spot, I mean, you could have put anyone there. Geno Smith, Kyler Murray, Daniel Jones. There was a lot of options, right, to put at this number 10 spot. Kirk Cousins. Ultimately, I went with Derek Carr. Down season for him. 3,000 yards, 24 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, 60 completion percentage. That's one of the lowest of his career. He was just not great last season. So I can see why the Raiders obviously are moving on from him, trying to go a different direction, and he just didn't perform great last season. But you look at the rest of his career, this guy's an elite passer, doesn't turn the ball over a lot, high completion numbers. So I think when you look at the rest of his career and what he has the potential to do on whatever new team he decides to go to, Derek Carr has the potential to go back to his old ways where he was a potential, at one point, NFL MVP. He's just this past season is going to overshadow how good he's been in his past, and rightfully so. I mean, he played horrible this past season, but early on in his career, the past few years of his career, he's been a guy that you can count on to be a serviceable quarterback. So I have him in at number 10. Just whatever team he goes to, I think they have a potential to make a playoff spot, to make the playoffs. I mean, obviously, if he goes to the Bears, he's not going to make the playoffs. But if he goes to like one of the teams I mentioned, they'll make the playoffs. So I have Derek Carr at number 10. I mean, you could have put anybody here. Geno Smith, I thought about. Kirk Cousins, I kind of thought about. Daniel Jones, I didn't give a thought to. Geno Smith, I did think about. Ultimately, I went with Derek Carr based off of what he's done for the majority of his career, not just based off of last season. But those are the top 10 quarterbacks: Mahomes, Burrow, Herbert, Allen, Hurts, Trevor Lawrence, Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson, Jared Goff, and Derek Carr. That's going to do it for this episode. Full NFL episode. Tomorrow we'll be back. Spring training is officially here, so we're going to start going through every single MLB division, recapping their offseason for each team in that division, and then seeing how I think they will fare. Go through some more MLB stuff, NBA, college basketball, and then obviously the NFL is always something to talk about. But that'll do it for this episode. 45-minute episode. We'll be back tomorrow on Thursday with another episode of The Franchise. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TikTok, Instagram, all in the description of every single episode. Like, share, comment, subscribe.